legal studies major at UMass Amherst. She's our Life Science Cares this summer, and she's going to do a little bit of an icebreaker for us. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Lila. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Dow, and like Lila said, I'm going to be a junior at UMass Amherst this fall, and I have a couple of icebreaker questions. So just to start, if you want to just drop your name in the chat as you're coming in, just to introduce yourself. I'd like to see anyone else that's from UMass or anyone going to school in the Boston area. Oh. Hi, Annie. Hi, Jenny. Hi, Peace. Jessica. Very cool. Hi, everyone. Oh, Tamika. Hi. Great. I'm really glad to see everyone here. Oh, UMass. Love to see the UMass kids. Great, great. Chris, Kelly. Okay, so maybe we could get started on some of these questions, a little bit of icebreaker. You can write it in the chat. You can unmute yourself, anything you want. But a really big theme about this, a really big theme about this session today is going to be a lot about your past and future employment experience. So one question that I usually find myself asking is, would you rather have a pause or a rewind button in your life? So I'm just going to give you a second to think about that. And if you just want to unmute yourself or drop a message in the chat, love to hear what you have to say.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. Would you rather have a pause or a rewind button in your life, and why?
Like a pause or like a rewind button?
Yeah, like a rewind or a pause or a fast forward.
I was really gonna choose like a fast forward.
Really? Why is that?
Like my past was rough, so I don't like. Some people like sometimes like I do actually hang on like my past. Like I come from like refugee from Burma, and if I only think back about like my past, like I won't be able to move forward.
Yeah.
There's like so many hard things that happened to me as a refugee, and then coming through here like without parents, like I have to survive myself here. I don't want to go fast forward. Like I really want to go like fast forward my life and then like finish my school that like where the America like really give me like right here, like they give me like all opportunity that I have, and I really gonna like do a fast forward in my life. Not
awesome.
gonna go back.
I'm so excited that you're part of Onramp because hopefully, you know, that'll help you as you go on in your future, and you'll meet people here, your peers as well, the other students too, who can kind of give you new
I'm really excited to be here.
That's great. Anyone who'd rather fast forward, you want to explain why?
We go back forward. I mean, go back with like the knowledge that we have now, or like just.
Oh my God, I really want to do that. Hindsight is 2020. Go back and correct all the mistakes.
And anyone who would want to live in the moment. I don't want to put anyone on the spot here, but I see a couple of pauses in the chat. So anyone want to say a little bit about that?
Well, I guess for me, I didn't put pause in the chat, but the reason why I put pause is because I don't know, everything is so fast right now. I want to have time to reflect on what I'm doing in that moment and not just keep going, because you need time to think about what you're actually doing, the decisions you're going to be making. So pausing and reflecting on everything else in order to move on will be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I have one more question if we have time, but it's just, if you could tell yourself, your past self, something that you know now, what would you tell them? Anyone can answer this. Or, I'm sorry?
Is either a prominent
I'm sorry?
it's okay to make mistakes. I like that.
Yes, definitely.
If I go back to my old self, I'll tell myself like to explore more and don't get stuck on like one thing, because then you're just, when you're young, you have so much opportunities. You seize that instead of like stuck with like a comfortable.
Yeah, I like the idea that like it's okay to make a mistake, because like we learn from our mistake, and then like we don't repeat the same mistake that like what happened in our life, because like we know it's like we already done that, like it's not good, and then like we need to learn from our mistake. But like if we never make a mistake, we won't know like it's bad for us or like good for us. So I really like that.
Also to like remind yourself that you always have time, no matter what the circumstances. It's like if you have that mentality, you're like, I feel like lately I've been, more relaxed and more and take care of my stuff in a more calm manner. So just remind yourself that you have time, that this is not supposed to be something that, like, making these hard choices is not supposed to be something that you make a decision that you make in like a day or two. It's like it's supposed to take time.
For me, oh, sorry, you can go, you got it.
Thank you. I tell myself to let go of the rigid 5-year plan. I think that somebody said this, sometimes so focused on like planning and seeing how you want your future to look that you forget to like live your life now. Like high school me needed a chill pill to relax and be a kid and have experiences that come with being in that part of your life that are just as important as planning to live to a certain place and get ahead.
I agree with Rebecca. I think that most things will sort out by themselves. I think as like a high school, I always thought that, oh, I need to do everything and everything as soon as possible that I can. But it's not the same. Just like in college or like in life, in reality, it's just like everything will sort out by himself.
Yeah, and to add on to that, for me, I'll say that it's okay to ask for help. Reflecting back in high school, I thought like I have to do everything by myself. It's okay to ask for help. And even in college, I keep telling myself this, like it's okay to ask for help. People are not going to judge you just because you don't know it, or just because you're asking for more help. You're just going to benefit from asking for the help you need.
Oh my goodness, how did you all get so wise? I feel the older people here, I feel like I didn't learn some of these lessons till much later, and I'm just so excited to hear your answers. We'll give it another minute if someone wants to share, and then we'll get started with our program.
I have a question just because of what just happened. When you guys were talking about some of like the pressures that you felt and just the plans that you had, do you think that you put those on yourself, or were they imposed on you by family, culture, and dynamics?
I feel like just like from family, I felt that pressure a lot, and then I feel like because of that pressure, I would constantly compare myself to people before me. For me, that was my aunt, because she was the first one who went to college, and then I wasn't the best in high school towards the end, so I would see all my friends doing way better, or how I felt was much better than I was. So it did bring me down a little bit, but now I know that I shouldn't compare myself to everyone.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm really so happy to hear your answers and sharing with each other, because I feel like, you guys as peers are probably the best support network for each other. So really great answers. And thank you so much, Anna, for opening the program today. Before I introduce the speakers, I want to urge all of you to ask questions in the chat during this program, or feel free to unmute yourselves when the speaker's done and ask a question. There are no stupid questions, so ask anything. Today's sessions touch on 3 things that I think are critical for career success. Some of the things that speakers will talk about will be big picture, and some you probably need to start practicing today. I'm sure you as undergrads, especially the rising seniors, you hear the word career all the time. But how do you kind of figure out how to build a career in the first place? Our first speaker is Dr. Anne-Marie Richard, Director and Patient Engagement Lead at Pfizer. She's going to talk to you about her own career journey and kind of give you confidence as you start to figure yours out. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Thank you so much, Leila. Good afternoon, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled and honored, and I am so grateful to Leila and to all of you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you. So as Leila said, I'm Anne-Marie Laurent Richard. I am the patient engagement lead in the internal medicine unit at Pfizer, right in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But I'll tell you, when I am asked who am I, the first thing that I typically want to reveal, even before I talk about my role at Pfizer, which I am absolutely proud of, is my ethnic background. And of course, it's clear that I'm Black, but I think one of the things that I'm even more proud of is the fact that I'm a Caribbean woman. Is anybody here from the Caribbean?
Yes, ma'am. What island are you from?
Dominica.
Oh my God, I'm from Haiti.
Yeah, my husband is Haitian. Anybody else? Or your parents might be.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. I saw Dominican Republic. Awesome. Your parents might be from the Caribbean and you've been born here, but again, you still have Caribbean background. So you've probably heard of the term owning your story or being confident in your own journey. And I think the first step to that is really understanding yourself, right? Getting to know who you are and understanding and acknowledging who you are as a person, because that inherently will affect how you show up, right? Without you even realizing it. Your background can influence how you live life every day, how you respond to situations that you face. For example, how do you respond to not getting the internship that you applied for, right? Or the one that you really wanted. How do you show up on the job where you, in the one that you did land, right? Probably being the only Black person, probably being the least experienced person on the job. How do you deal with this? These types of responses define you, and they are influenced by your upbringing, by your background, whether it's ethnic, etc. So my presentation today is supposed to be about, having confidence in your own career journey. And I will say it's a bit ironic because this has never been one of my strengths, right? I'm not a very confident person, and certainly this word has never been used to describe me. However, this is exactly why I choose to share my story with you, my career journey. And hopefully that will motivate you and give you hope, right? And relay the message that I'd like to relay. Even if you're not an overly confident person, there are ways to finding your strengths and letting that work for you wherever you want to go, right? So for me, an important part of my story and how I show up is my Caribbean background, my upbringing. I grew up, as I said, on a tiny island in the Caribbean, the Commonwealth of Dominica, about 75,000 people, so very small island, beautiful island. My parents had a high school education, worked hard. We had a modest lifestyle, none of the luxuries. I never owned or even learned to ride a bike, but I had a very good education. I had a good elementary school education. I had a good high school education. The system of education in Dominica is very rigid. I went to all Catholic schools, wore uniforms, very strict and very, very high discipline. And these experiences are what have shaped me today and shaped the way that I show up as a person and as a leader. So unfortunately, beyond high school in Dominica, there are very few opportunities to further your education. So most people leave the island after a 1-2-year college that we have on the island. So most people go to high school, they go to that 1-2-year college, and if they'd like to further their education, they have to leave the island. And so this is what I did. So my mom actually worked as a nurse on the island, and I spent a lot of my childhood in the hospital, you know, doing little chores for her. And so I developed a very early passion to help people, right? To care for people, to change lives. And so I always wanted to be a doctor or a nurse, but I was aiming for a doctor. And so following high school, I went to that 2-year college, and then I came here to the United States to further my education. I attended Suffolk University right here in Boston. My parents literally had to put up their home to basically help me get a student loan as the collateral on the loan to help me to come to the US to further my education. So I came here with a purpose. I came here to get an education, to become a doctor, be able to really have a positive impact on people's lives, hopefully save lives. When I arrived here in the US at Suffolk University, I had a serious culture shock, right? I was very timid. I was quiet. I am an introvert, even if it doesn't seem like that. And though I knew what I wanted, I lacked confidence. That was something I never really had. And coming here made it worse. I saw myself in a culture and an environment that I thought I just didn't fit into. I was one of about 2 to 3 Black students in the majority of my classes. I had a very strong Caribbean accent. I was unfamiliar with a lot of the discussions that my peers were having, like whether it's, you know, the food that they ate yesterday, places that they visited. I felt very insecure. And in some cases I felt dumb, like I should know that, but I don't. And of course, I grew up in a very different culture. We watched different movies. So even when they talked about movies, there were a lot of movies I hadn't seen. So it was very basic things, but it exacerbated my lack of confidence. And so I just felt like I didn't fit in. Now I know it's a good thing to be different, right? And it's okay to be different and to have a different cultural background. And that is actually a strength. And I'm experiencing it now in my new role, but back then it was not comfortable being different. And many of you may have experienced it. Many of you may have gone through that, you know, whether it's in the schools that you attended and jobs that you've applied for, where you don't feel good about yourself. You're probably unsure about, you know, the direction that you're going in, whether you can do the job, etc. And it would be great if anybody's willing to share any experiences that they've had in terms of just not feeling like they belong. Anybody willing to share? Maybe one person before I go on?
I can go.
Sure.
So as I mentioned before, I'm Haitian American. So I transitioned to living in the United States during the year 2010 when the Haitian earthquake happened. And in Haiti, I was in the 4th grade, but over here I took a test and I placed in 5th grade, but because of my age, they put me in the 3rd grade. Not to mention that earthquake happened in January, so it's already well past the first couple months of school. Everybody knows everyone. I come in, I'm a new student. There's the language barrier. I can say, hi, how are you? My name is enough to like orient myself, but at the end of the day, I can't understand anything that's being said to me. So I'm just one of 3 students that just is going through this transition, but we're not even in the same classroom. So everyone around me is speaking in a language that I don't understand. The teachers are trying to communicate with me, but I can't understand. I see like the sympathetic look on everyone's faces. I see this ability I see them trying to connect with me, but I just can't understand. So as a student, that puts you in a disadvantage. And also as a kid, it makes you feel uncomfortable because you're just like, well, I don't want everyone just doting on me. I don't want to keep being the exception to every rule. But I also don't know how to help myself or how to place myself in a better situation. And I remember just going through that first day, just feeling stressed and angry and annoyed. And I that was only 2 weeks after the earthquake had happened. You still haven't even gotten to like fully understand the transition that you just went through, because it was just like one day you woke up, you went to school, you came back, you heard classmates were dead, friends were dead, people that you live next to, and you just saw your whole country's infrastructure, which was already not developed, just take the biggest hit it's taken for years. So I feel like that was a time in life where I was really just not the most confident. It impacted my ability to learn. It impacted my ability to connect with people, and it stalled my growth for a little bit before I was able to just lean on the fact that the people that were around me, although they didn't speak the same language as me, were trying their best to communicate with me and get me the help that I needed to catch up to what they were at.
Absolutely. No, I thank you so much for sharing that, Rebecca. And in your case, I think to a certain extent, you know, it was a valid sort of feeling of, you know, not being able to achieve, you don't speak the language, you had some, you know, valid disadvantages. In my case, I think a lot of it was self-imposed. I was feeling insufficient because I just, you know, didn't understand what they were talking about. I felt like I wasn't smart enough. And this was a period where I seriously needed some self-affirmation, right? And this is exactly what we call imposter syndrome, where we sort of, in our own mind, sort of feel psychologically that we, you know, without our skills, without our accomplishments, we feel like we are a fraud. And it's only a matter of time until people, you know, sort of discover that. And it's self-imposed. I'm sorry, someone was saying something?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So, and as I said, at that point, you sort of need some self-affirmation. You need to reassure yourself that, yes, I can do this. Yes, I do belong here, right? And I am smart, as smart as the other people who are in the room. Muhammad Ali, you know, when he used to compete, used to just blurt out, "I am the greatest." And a lot of people perceived it as being arrogant, but that was his self-affirmation. That was his way of convincing himself that I am going to beat the shit out of this guy, right? And sometimes we need that. And you have to find, you know, what way allows you to sort of self-affirm. It's not the same for everyone, but these are the moments when you need that. Because your thoughts, your way of thinking and your perception can really influence how you act, right? If you self-doubt and you say, I can't do this, you're never going to achieve it because you won't even do it. And so, you know, even when you just, you know, psychologically tell yourself that I can do this, it allows you to at least act on it. There's no guarantee that you will succeed, but at least you'll try, right? And that's important. That's very important. And that comes with building that confidence. So for me, my strength at that point at Suffolk University was really the fact that I knew I had a good education, right? In my mind, I knew I could achieve, at least academically. And the fact that I didn't feel comfortable hanging out with my friends, I basically went from school to the library, right? And guess what? That worked. Right? I studied hard. That was one thing that I had learned from my upbringing. I studied hard. I got all A's. I had a GPA of 3.98 my first year at Suffolk, right? And so that was my self-affirmation, and it boosted my confidence and helped me get through it, right? I then started making friends. I hung out with them because I felt like I had something that put me at a disadvantage, right? And so sometimes that's what you need, to find that strength that can allow you to shine or allow you to be competitive, right? If it's in a job situation, and let that drive you. Let that be your self-affirmation. So anyway, I graduated from Suffolk University. In the interim between undergrad and grad school, I got married, I had a family, and then I had to do some analysis, right, of how do I balance my family life with school. And in the end, after much thought, I decided that I was going to pursue a PhD versus med school. And so I ended up going to Boston University for a PhD in pathology. So I went to grad school there right here in Boston. And, you know, I went from a small school, Suffolk was very small, to a large school where I sat in an auditorium with like 125 students, right? At Suffolk, my smallest class was probably 25. And I was still very shy. I hated public speaking. But I had to learn to do it, right? As uncomfortable as I was with it, I knew I had to do this. I had to come out of my comfort zone because that was the only way I could succeed in my PhD program. So I developed something that worked for me. I practice, right? And this is one way, again, to build your confidence. There may be situations where, you don't feel comfortable speaking, practice. What am I going to say when I get into the room, when I get into this meeting? What am I going to say to my mentor or my manager when we meet today, right? Practice what you're going to say. And if you have to bring notes, bring your notes, whatever makes you feel comfortable, right? And that's what I did. I practiced a lot when I had to present. I brought notes if I had to, and I survived. I completed my PhD, and then I stayed on at BU for a period of time. And part of the reason I stayed there, I will tell you, is I got into that comfort zone, right? And this is something, again, that sort of prevents us from moving on. Due to your lack of confidence, you get into a situation or an environment where you get to know everybody, you get comfortable with them, and you learn to sort of do the things that you were uncomfortable with. And so you just want to stay there because you feel safe, right? You feel confident there. But thankfully, when you get into situations like this, it's just a matter of time until something pushes you off the edge and you have to take that leap. And that's a good thing, right? And so, Oprah once said that, our brains are hardwired for comfort and our souls are hardwired for growth. And you have to sort of balance that, right? You want to be in a comfortable spot. You love being in your comfort zone, but you know that it's not good for your career development. And so I eventually moved on, right? I actually started, I got to a point, I would say, in my career at BU where I felt like I needed more. I needed to see the relevance of my research. I wanted to know that what I was doing would impact lives. And I thought moving into industry would do this for me, right? So I started applying for industry jobs. But I feared what was on the other side because I knew it was going to be starting from scratch, not knowing anybody. I would be in an uncomfortable situation, but I did it, right? I had to get myself to do it. And again, as I said, in situations like this, you get to a point where you will be pushed off the edge, whether it's lack of grants, lack of funding, whatever the case. And so that drove me to do it. And that, again, is the imposter syndrome, and everyone experiences it. So I think one of the most important things to keep in mind when you're having that imposter syndrome is that you're not alone, right? There are other people experiencing it, and some deal with it much better than others. Some get out of it much better, much quicker than others, but you're not alone. It's something that everybody experiences at some point in their life. So eventually I got into industry. I got into a position, actually a contract position at Wyeth at the time, very small company. And that company got acquired by Pfizer. And, I went from a contract position to a full-time position very quickly. Actually, I broke my contract because an opportunity came up. They were looking for an islet biologist, and that was my expertise. And, I didn't realize how scarce it was, that skill. And at that moment where they were looking for this person, I got selected because they couldn't find anybody else for months. That position was posted. And that sort of demonstrated my value, right? I realized for a minute that I had a skill that very few people had, and I could use that to my advantage, right? So sometimes look within you, right? And sometimes look around you and see where the gaps are and what gap you can fill, right? And when you fill a gap like that, that helps to boost your confidence, right? Because you realize that you do have value, right? And you can be competitive. So this is one other thing. So I got, again, to a point in my career at Pfizer where, again, I started feeling unfulfilled, right? I was not thrilled with just the basic science anymore. Even if I knew that somewhere down the line it could become a drug, it wasn't close enough. So I wanted to get to a role where I was directly interacting with patients and, I could have a bigger impact. And so again, I knew what I wanted, but again, that imposter syndrome kept creeping in, and I kept feeling like I am not trained as a patient advocate, right? I am a scientist, I'm an islet biologist. So how do I get into that position? And so I just didn't have the confidence. I looked at roles and I looked at the description and I kept thinking, I'm not qualified for this. I am not a good fit, right? But what does it mean to be a good fit for a job, right? we always assume that it means, having a degree, your GPA, certain training certificates, but research shows that a big part of what hiring managers look for is personality, right? Your ability to be a team player, your ability to perform under pressure, to thrive during change, your willingness to learn is a big one, right? And these qualities are sometimes more important than your degree, your academic qualifications. And I found out that for patient advocacy, the qualities that were needed were empathy and the ability to communicate and build relationships and get along with others. And it turned out that these were skills that were inherent for me, right? These were skills that I had anyway from my upbringing. These are things that you learn from your parents, from the community that you grew up in, right? And you just need to embrace them and use them to your advantage and use that as your self-affirmation, and it boosts your confidence. And this can also be developed, right? It's not just gained from your upbringing. So even when I had no training for patient advocacy, I was selected for a patient advocacy role because I had these qualities that came across, whether it was when I interviewed, in some cases, it was the interactions that I had at Pfizer with different people, right, in the organization that knew who I was. And that brings me to my final piece of advice, mentorship, right? One of the things that also greatly contributed to me getting this role was having a mentor, right? My mentors were the ones who helped me realize what I could bring to this field. Even if I didn't have formal training in patient advocacy, I had the qualities, right? The personality that was needed for patient advocacy. And so, I had multiple mentors and again, they were instrumental in helping me advance my career. And I strongly advise you, if you don't have a mentor yet, you should seek out a mentor. Mentors are instrumental in helping you find your strengths, understand your value, which can ultimately help build your confidence. In one case, I had a sponsor. It was a senior leader who I had interacted with, who had seen my, personal qualities, and who advocated for me behind the scenes when I wasn't even in the room, right? And that helped me get the position too. So again, how you show up when you interact with people can have a long-term effect that you would not even think about. So again, strongly advocate for mentors. So I, in the interest of time, I am going to wrap up. So again, find your strengths, right? Understand your value and let that be your self-affirmation and build confidence. Stop doubting yourself. Everybody has value, right? And when you get into a situation where you feel like you don't know how you're going to perform, practice, anticipate it, go in with a plan, even if it's written down. Nobody's going to shame you for having a plan, having something written down on your notebook. Do that if you need to. I still do it, even in my current role, right? And know what you want to achieve out of this meeting, this job, and have that plan. Be willing to learn, right? Build new skills, and this is instrumental in this changing environment. There's constantly change in almost every company, and in order to thrive, you need to constantly build your skills, keep learning, understand where you can fill a gap, right? And this is one of the ways to grow as a person and also to build confidence. So never stop learning. And then the last one, mentorship. I am going to highly stress mentorship. Find a mentor who can help you grow, who can help you recognize your strengths.
Thanks so
All right,
much.
I'm going to stop here.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Thanks so much. There was so much there, and I hope that students really, had a sense of your journey and kind of what they should be working on within themselves. Our next speaker is Chris Henderson, who's the SVP of Research at Biogen, and he'll talk about teamwork. I don't think I need to bother explaining why this is an important topic, because all of you are probably part of a team this summer, and there are challenges. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Thank you so much for being here, Chris.
It's a real pleasure, and I was really had great fun listening to the previous talk. So my journey is a bit different. As you might have guessed from my accent, I'm British. And I'm a neuroscientist, and I did my PhD, up to my PhD training in Britain. Then I moved to France for what I thought was 2 years postdoc, but stayed there 26 years. And set up a couple of startup companies, but I was still an academic scientist. Then I got yanked away and moved to New York, to Columbia University, where I spent 10 years. And then when I just got more excited, just as Anne-Marie was saying about the application of some of my science, I got yanked up to Boston by Biogen, a company that's almost totally focused on neuroscience and is quite a lot in the news these days, but I probably won't go into those aspects. But so it's great to be speaking after someone from fantastic company like Pfizer, and before someone from a startup. So yeah, so by the way, we all have imposter syndrome. However old you get and however apparently advanced, you just can't believe that you're the one able to do this. So do believe, because everyone else is thinking the same thing. And I was really struck by the natural lead-in from Anne-Marie. You were saying, when you're interviewing someone, sure, you look at their CV. It would be ridiculous to say that doesn't exist. But she said, you're looking at their capability for teamwork. And that's absolutely true. And so I thought that's what I'd sort of share a few thoughts on. No rules here. And I'll be watching the chat, but if you just want to pipe up, please do so. So, you know, I think that teamwork is almost not an option, right? It's something we've got to do with very few exceptions if we want to achieve any of our goals. But I think what's sort of comforting about it is it comes in many flavors and many levels, and you can build through those to take on more leadership and so on, but it's still all about the team. So what struck me is, I don't know about some of the team projects you guys are doing this summer, but even, you know, back in my younger days, some of the first teams I was involved with were just 2-people ones. And, you know, you think, actually, that's not really a team, it's just a couple of people. But the more I think about that situation, the more it somehow distills what you need to be thinking about, even if you get through to being head of research of the company. And, you know, so when you set up in a project, I think it's the important thing is always to say, what is the team goal? And what counts most is that we achieve that. And it's just so important to make almost everything secondary to that. So, because there will always be different voices, pushes and pulls and so on. But what matters most is that the team succeeds. And so in those, even though in those one-to-one situations, you have encountered, it's not like you're just starting now, but some of the normal challenges. So you have to go in recognizing that your point of view won't always win out. Otherwise, it's not a team, by the way, and you're sort of somehow given the miraculous power of running everything. But that means that another thing is that if you don't express your point of view, it will never win out. And so it's really finding the balance between speaking up and wanting to win every point. And you know, speaking up, even if you are a bit shy about it, I'm not sure if any of you are, I don't know you, but some people are. Speaking up, you can tell yourself, is vital to the team's success. And so it's not a selfish thing to do that. It's a real part of teamwork to do so. And so that's, I think, you know, I see people in meetings who I know are much more expert than me, being shy about speaking up, but it's their point of view we want to hear, even if, let's say, there's an overall strategic point of view that then has to be taken into account as well. So that would be my #1 role. Speak up, but don't speak up, but don't insist on winning the small point, because you're in there for the war and not the battle, so to speak. Another really important thing to think about, I think, especially as you're thinking of moving forward, I heard someone talk about a 5-year plan, which is very much impresses me. I find it hard to plan the next week, but as you're planning on moving up, is plan in that 2-person group, think very carefully about what could make your partner succeed. I think I've seen myself, and when I watch my kids doing this as undergraduates, there can be the personalities who try and push down the other so as to come forward. And honestly, that can work in the short term. But no one looking at that team ever gets fooled by that, actually. I think it's just very obvious when that's happening. What people really evaluating the team, evaluating you care about is how you have helped the team and the success and other members. And then that will be the best way of having your talents recognized and actually thereby carrying your point. So those are the things I'd say. And then you know, a next step might be you move into a job or even still at university. You're a member of a bigger team and you're not the team leader yet. But you're there because, not just say you needed to put a name on, because you know a bit about, let's say, one sub-area of that. And as Anne-Marie knows very well, that's very typical of an a team in the pharmaceutical industry where it's a collection of experts, each of whom is more expert than the team leader. But the team leader nevertheless has a very key role. So whatever flavor of that you're trying out, let's just put you in even if you're just beginning to be an expert in something, let's put you in one of those team member roles. And I think you can then start applying exactly the same thought. So with one additional thing I'm going to add. So how can I help the team's success? And that is certainly not by keeping quiet all the time. You're there for a reason. You're there because you have something to bring. But it's certainly not by saying, my point of view is the only one, therefore you've got to be willing to listen. But I think another layer I'd like to add on here is that it's really important to put yourself in other team members' shoes. And I'm going to focus on the team leader, actually. So you can be sure that they're going through imposter syndrome as well. You can be sure that they're worried about the success of the project and how they can do it. And to bring all these strings together, if they're a good leader, they absolutely need to know what's working and what isn't. So sometimes I know people are a bit shy about actually raising their hand and saying, I was wrong last time, that wasn't true, or these data aren't strong. But if you don't do that, you're seriously weakening the team. If you do it, the team leader will be not only grateful, but will recognize your input. So I think it's really vital to do. And even more than that, I mean, don't be proud. Hey, Anne-Marie said she was an introvert. You might have guessed I think I'm normally classified as an extrovert. But so I'm not shy about speaking up. But it's doubly hard for someone with my personality to say, actually, I'm out of my depth, I need some help. And that doesn't need to be in a plenary meeting, it can be with a leader or a subset of people. But if you don't do that once again, you're stepping away from what must be your main goal, which is the success of the team. Because the team can't succeed if you're not being able to do your part of it. And it doesn't mean it's a personal shortcoming. It may be you don't have enough time or resources. It may be that the question asked to you is more difficult than anyone realizes. But if you keep on pretending things are going well and then suddenly there's a deadline or suddenly the whole project depends on it, and then you have to sort of fess up that it's not there yet, it's not good. So, you know, once again, in this middle type of role I'm defining, I would say, be honest. So say when things have gone wrong, say when you need help. And you're doing that not to be excessively humble. Humility isn't a bad thing, but it's not the only way of running a project. But it's helping the team know where it stands, helping the leader succeed in bringing the team objectives forward, and therefore getting yourself recognized as that team player that Anne-Marie referred to. So once again, important, it should be very little about ego. It's not zero ego. The world isn't like that, but it's really the team. And because, when I'm not suggesting I've succeeded in any of these things, but my career has gradually progressed. And because I think that then prepares you for the next level, let's say. And this is something we call in companies, I didn't know this phrase until 6 years ago when I moved to Biogen, we call it's an HR term, leading through the matrix. So it's managing to inspire people to do the right thing for the overall goal without having any managerial authority over them. And honestly, I do think that having measured the limits of having authority over people, which I suppose my current role gives me a bit, that you can get much more done by the type of leadership which is exactly built on these team building skills. So you might go into these things saying, hey, I'm not a leader. Actually, I never thought of myself as one, extrovert or not. But then you realize that, well, actually, there are these big goals that everyone wants to realize. And you can help, not exactly by being a backseat driver or pulling strings, but just tracing a path forward that's so attractive that people want to do it, although you don't tell them to. And in the university context, they want to do it, although you haven't got extra money to give them. And so, I think that was one of my greatest joys about being at Columbia University, which is in the medical center, which is a huge institution, as you know, and with just every type of personality, every type of skill set, and, good and bad and medium, but with this huge reserve of know-how and motivation, actually, to do. So I set up a couple of translational centers. So one, I'll talk about one that's called the Motor Neuron Center to focus on two dreadful diseases, spinal muscular atrophy and ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. No clinical training. I'd had one small startup and so on. I know a little bit about neuroscience, but we managed actually to put together the biggest center in the world focusing on these things. I wasn't employer of any of these people. They all reported to their different department heads. Because we got together, we got some philanthropic money that we could use to support projects. But I still think the most important skill was just convincing people of the value of the goal and why doing it as a team would work. And I often had to sort of push back and say, when people said, no, just give me some money, I'll do it. And it was the teamwork aspect that really, I think, convinced people and led to some concrete successes. So I'm just going to wrap up in a minute or two, I think. But so, yeah.
Chris, I wonder, in the chat, a lot of students sort of brought up communicating.
Oh, yes, I haven't followed the chat. Sorry, having said I would.
When there are lots of different sort of personality styles and you're a junior person, so how do you communicate and figure out sort of the personalities and have that confidence to say your opinion, especially when you feel like you know the least out of anyone else on the team?
Yeah, and honestly, that's something I'm still learning at the young age of 18. It's very complicated. I'll tell you a true story, actually. I had with a previous boss, who I admired scientifically, I had just the worst communication problems. And, I'm pretty open to discussions and things. And it was only when I did something, I was helped by others, actually, here, just looking at, this person wouldn't meet with me, would just send emails. And I thought, what's the matter with this? And then, yeah, it's a well-documented fact that introverts prefer to communicate by email and extroverts prefer verbally. And that's sort of such a simple truth that I hadn't learned by then. So I think, apart from going into all these Myers-Briggs scales and things, which I think are very interesting, actually, if you ever get an opportunity, it's just saying, just because this person isn't doing it the way I do, it doesn't mean they're not aligned. And so I think, and others should chip in, honestly, I'm not an expert on this, but that is another way of what I was saying, of putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Even if you can't analyze it precisely, the real thing is what they're saying good for the project? And if so, actually, can I change my way of talking about this or getting there or something like that? So, and yeah, I'm a bottle half full guy. You don't know me well, but you may have guessed it. Some people just aren't, and it used to make me despair. But it doesn't matter. Those bottle half empty people are very useful in reminding us not to overpromise. And by goodness, when you succeed, they bubble over even more than the bottle half empty. So just trying to do that. So I'd say don't overanalyze, but don't be worried about personalities. You almost certainly don't know what the person's thinking, and you will almost certainly attribute to them intentions, including bad ones they don't have. So be sincere, honest, and modest, and that's the best you can do. And then just think about their responses. I don't know if that's helpful.
It is. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I just feel like all the speakers are bringing up so many topics that, really talk for 90 minutes about this specific topic. And I wish we had more time. But thank you so much, Chris, for being here and speaking to students.
You're very welcome.
So the final topic for today is pretty important, I think, in terms of something you need to start doing well now, whether you're still going to be a student for years or you're about to enter the workplace, and that's giving and receiving feedback. To give you some tips and tricks, we have Angela Justice, Chief People Officer at TCF Squared Therapeutics. We also have 4 students who will be part of this session. Rebecca Francois, Briti Prajapati, Kevin Wu, and Stefan Avery. Ife Jean, a doctoral candidate at Harvard and part of the Life Science Commission, will help out as well. Thank you all and welcome, Angela.
Thank you so much, Lila. Let me share my screen. I do have some slides. Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. Can I share my slides, or do you have them perhaps to share?
Ife, would you?
Yeah, you can. You can try again.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Looks like we got it now. Can everybody see the slides? Can you see?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, super, fantastic. Well, great. Oh, let's see. I lost all of you. I need to get my screen back here. Hang on one second. Sorry about this. While I'm getting this organized, actually, why don't we go into our first poll? So I have a couple of activities just to make this really interactive. And I think, Ife, you were going to help. Yep. So first poll here, if everybody could just answer this question. Describe your mood today. So we're doing it in terms of the weather. So how are you feeling?
So everyone, the poll is live. You can answer that. I see that almost 50% of our participants have entered their vote.
Sorry, I'm still trying to play around with my slides here so I can see. I think I got it now. I just want to be able to see everybody's faces, which will be really important for the next part of the activity. So great. Yep. As soon as we have our poll, why don't we go ahead and see the results?
Okay, so I'm going to close this in a few more seconds.
Perfect.
Let's see.
Oh, I should do mine too, I guess. There we go.
Close this poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Cloudy. Most people are cloudy with a little bit of, so we're partly cloudy here today. A little bit of sunshine, a little bit of clouds. Okay, that's pretty good. I'd like to just get a pulse on how everybody's feeling, get you kind of, active as we get ready for this workshop part of the session. Let's close this one and move on to our next poll. So this one's a little bit different. And the question is, if I can advance my slide, what is your first reaction when somebody asks if they can share some feedback with you? So is it, oh no, what did I do wrong? Or I think I'm gonna throw up. Wait, who are they to give me feedback? Or yes, please, I'd love some feedback. What's your reaction, your initial reaction to that?
Looks like we have about 75% of the votes in. Thank you all for being so quick.
Yeah, this is great.
Just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm gonna share it now.
Opposed. Okay. How do we feel when somebody asks, they can give us feedback? All right. Yeah. Wow. Actually, I'm really surprised by this. This is kind of awesome. So 50%, oh no, what did I do wrong? To be honest, that's always my kind of initial reaction too. And trust me, I actually love feedback and really seek it out. And yet still there's always a part of me that's like, what did I do? Oh no, there's something like a little nerve-wracking about it. Only 5% we're going to throw up. That's actually pretty good. Usually that number's a little bit higher. We have a very, solid stomach group here, which is awesome. And only 1% with that kind of angry, who are they, right? So why do we have these strong reactions to feedback? I mean, I think that's, kind of the first question, right? Like, why do we have these reactions? And generally, they tend usually to be on the little bit more negative or anxious sort of side. The fact that 50% of you are actually like, yes, please, that's fantastic. And I hope that ultimately we can get you all to that yes, please kind of place. But again, know that it's a journey, right? Like I still find myself in the, oh no, even though again, I really do welcome and appreciate feedback and value it. So let's go into a little workshop that will give you a chance to see some feedback in action. And then we'll talk about what works, what doesn't, how things felt, and have some time for some discussion. So if we move to the next slide here and we get our volunteers ready. Sorry, I'm finding my clicker. There we go. So we're gonna play just a little game called Pictionary Feedback. It's really simple, very straightforward. And then after that, we'll discuss the feedback. We'll go through a really simple feedback framework so you can get some practice and have some tools in your tool belt for giving feedback. And then we'll have a little group discussion. So let me see if I have our 4 volunteers here. We have Brittany, we have Kevin, Rebecca, and Stefan. Are you all with us?
Yes.
Fantastic. And you all have your video on? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, that's an important piece because we're going to have to be able to see your screens here for the Pictionary feedback. So real simple, volunteers. We're going to give you 2 minutes to draw a house. Now, first, you're going to draw a house. Again, just 2 minutes. And then I'm going to give you some feedback on the house. And then you're going to have a chance to try it again. The best house wins. Okay, make sense? All right, you have your paper and pencil or writing utensil in front of you. You have 2 minutes. Ready, get set, go. Draw your house. And the rest of you, you can just think about what kind of house you would draw if you were given the opportunity. This is really exciting, and I'm really curious to see the kinds of houses that you've drawn. So how are your first, while they're kind of drawing, how are your first couple of sessions? What were some of the key takeaways you learned? Anyone want to share anything? And I can't see the chat, so if you're chatting in, I'm not able to see that, unfortunately.
I kind of like took away that it's really good to have like confidence in yourself and your abilities and like not like really doubt yourself. And I kind of heard that a lot from, I think from both speakers, but mostly Anne-Marie. And I really actually needed to hear that because I do that a lot sometimes.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. I think it's Gerard that, yeah, spot on, right? And another lesson that we have to keep reminding ourselves and learning over and over and over. But truly, like everyone brings a lot to the table. Your experiences, your perspectives, your insights, they all matter. And the more you're able to fully bring that to whatever work you're doing or team you're on or role you're in, the better off everyone is going to be from your perspective. So yeah, keep that confidence kind of front and center because you're in these positions, you're here for a reason, and everyone wants to hear your voice. All right, we have 1 more minute on these houses. Anyone else have any takeaways from the earlier speakers? Anything really going to stick with you in particular? Looks like the scene maybe is trying to talk, but on mute. And I might be wrong. I just see the yellow box lighting up. I just heard a little bit of Anne-Marie's. Unfortunately, I missed most of it, but I heard Chris. And he talked about imposter syndrome, which so great to be introduced to that concept right now and so early. It is really pervasive, and you might think it's just you might think you're the only one saying, how did I get here, like looking around. But yeah, Chris is right. It's everyone. I think everybody feels that at some point, and you just have to assume that everybody else feels that as well, which also helps bring a little more confidence to the room. All right, we are at 2 minutes here, so let's see those houses. Why don't, Kevin, can we have you go first? And I think Ife was going to do something new to me, a Zoom spotlight. I don't even know what that is. So let's see if we can see Kevin's house. Just hold it up to the screen and we'll see if we can get that spotlight on you. I might have to flip through and find you.
Can everyone see the house that Kevin's drawing?
Yes, now I see it. Okay, great. Yep. So let's see, Kevin, can you pull it down just a tiny bit? I just want to see the top. Yep. Okay, and pull it up a little bit more so I can see the top. Okay, great. Yeah, so I mean, you totally met the brief, right? That's definitely a house. I can see, looks like a solid foundation. You got a roof, a chimney even, a window with multiple panes, a door with even a doorknob. Yeah, I mean, I noticed that you really made sure to keep all your lines nice and square. Everything is very, like, again, structurally sound. I'm curious, like when you thought about your house, were you thinking about that solidity? Were you thinking about making it really solid?
Yeah, I made sure all the lines were straight.
Yeah, exactly. And what that really does, again, to me, that really conveys a sense of strength and of really stability. It's like a house that you could move in, feel confident it isn't going to get blown down by a storm or a tornado. Like, it's a solid house. Yeah, great. Well done. I mean, next time I would say maybe pay a little bit of attention to ornamentation. So maybe think about, is there any kind of landscaping around the house or anything else just to kind of make it pop a little bit more. But otherwise, yeah, I think you nailed it. Well done.
Thank
Excellent. Rebecca, can we see yours?
Can I see so?
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Great.
So, okay, Rebecca, I can see that. Yeah. I mean, I think that's great, right? You have, again, solid house, got some ornamentation. I noticed your nails are gorgeous. Did you do that manicure yourself? I mean, I'm sorry. It's just so, like, I just can't help but notice. Really nice. Yeah.
Thank you. No, I go to a salon near my house.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Super. Thanks, Rebecca. Pretty, let's see your house. Okay, pretty. Yeah, so I mean, I see what you're trying to do there. You definitely, can you keep it held up? Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I like it. I think you definitely tried. I would say that if I were you, I would probably pay a little bit more attention to proportionality. Your scale's just a little bit off there, and I'm not quite sure, are those clouds? Is this a house in the clouds, or are they supposed to be bushes? I can't tell, but I mean, I don't know. I get the sense that you always try to be a little bit maybe more creative than is necessary, and really we just need you to kind of meet the brief. So yeah, I would say next time, just think a little bit more about making sure you're meeting the brief and maybe not trying to be so creative all the time. Okay. Great. Okay. Audience, what were your thoughts? Tell me your thoughts about the houses. Anybody have any feedback for them before we go into the contest?
I feel like each of the artists, I'm sorry.
What was that, Gerard?
I feel like each of the artists kind of like really put their own spin on like the house. Like they're all houses, but they all kind of had their own like each one was different. Like one person focused on like just the rigidity of the house, another basically the surroundings of the house, and then another one basically focusing on the plants. I really like how each artist kind of did something different.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. Anybody else have any feedback? Anything that will help them before we go into this contest, where we have our 4 volunteers vying to be the grand prize champion of house drawing? Pictionary feedback.
I agree with the previous speaker on the differences in perspectives. I thought that was really interesting. It's interesting because I thought the very last one, I am a person who is very detail oriented, and I'm always looking to give more than ask. And it's funny, I looked at it, the last one, and I thought, oh, this is really nice. And I'm looking at all of the detail, and you said maybe it's too much detail. So I'm curious to hear, you know, maybe I missed the directions that you gave, that it was supposed to be brief, but that was what caught my attention.
Yeah, that's great, Anne-Marie. Thanks for the comment. Anyone else? Any other reactions?
And Angela, would Stefan be one of the contestants as well? Did we have?
Oh, Stefan. Yeah, Stefan, I'm sorry. I just didn't have time to give you feedback. Okay, game's up here. Let me get on with this. We don't actually have a contest. We're not going to make you draw it again. And of course, Stefan, I'm really not purposely trying to ignore you. It is meant to illustrate a point, but could we have you share your house as well? And you're like, no, forget it. I don't want to share my house now. Yeah. Okay, great. I love it. No, that's fantastic. And again, like that's an excellent house. Let me just give you all a little bit more of a kind of high level summary of what I was hoping to illustrate here. And we'll see how that kind of played out for all of you. So which person do you think got the most helpful feedback? Like if you had to go into a contest now and draw a house, like meeting my frankly very vague and unclear expectations, who do you think is best positioned to draw a house to meet my expectations?
Kevin.
Kevin, yeah, how come?
Because Kevin got what I've heard referred to as like a sandwich. So he got what he did good, and what he needed to improve, which you also closed with just some things that you appreciated. So with that mix, he's able to get a sense of what you like and also what you'd like to see and a little of what you don't like.
Yeah.
Versus where I didn't get any. I got that you saw something in Kevin. I included something in my work that Kevin did not. You highlighted that, but after that, you segued into my nails, which weren't supposed to be the focus of the evaluation. So I kind of got something, but if I'm working on another draft, I don't know what to go into, or my structure sound. Do I just keep adding details around the house because you may be into landscaping? And with Brittany, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I'm sorry if I don't. She didn't really get much other than the fact that she didn't like her creativity.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on, Rebecca, absolutely. And frankly, how like annoying and disrespectful was it of me to comment on your nails when I'd given you this challenge about drawing a house? Completely irrelevant. Why was I doing that? Terrible. Right? But that happens all the time. And in fact, it happens to women more than men. It happens to minorities more than majorities. There's a great body of research out there that actually shows, in particular, women get less meaningful, actionable feedback than men, and that partly holds back their development in their careers. So I share this for a lot of reasons, one of which is, as you're giving feedback to peers, to ultimately people that will work with and for you, make sure you're giving real substantive feedback focused on the task at hand that's going to help your colleagues, your peers, your direct reports grow and develop. Focusing on irrelevant details, just saying, oh, that's nice, or oh, that's terrible, that doesn't help anyone get better. It doesn't help anyone improve in a directionally meaningful way. What about you, Brittany? How did your feedback feel?
I really appreciated your feedback, but it also shows how, you know, you have, like, as an artist or as someone who's trying to work for someone else, you need to understand their needs. So it was definitely eye-opening, I guess, if that makes sense.
It was so hard to, I told Brittany about this ahead of time. I let her know, look, I'm going to give you some negative constructive feedback. It's not going to be very nice. Oh my goodness, it was so hard to give you negative feedback because your house was actually gorgeous. Like all of your houses were great, right? Like everybody put their own spin on it. I gave you really no direction. So none of you had any idea what I was really looking for. I wasn't really looking for anything particular. I just wanted to see a house so I could do this contrived, feedback session with you. But Brittany, it was really difficult to do anything negative. So what I was hoping to illustrate with you is, you got some things right. I was trying to be a little critical in certain places, but also a bit constructive in others. But then I threw in something like, you always do that. You always try to be more creative. How do I know? I don't know what you always do or always don't do. That's another thing you hear people doing when they give feedback. They overgeneralize and over personify the feedback, and they make it much more emotionally charged than it really needs to be. So something else to keep in mind as you're getting and giving feedback is make sure the feedback you're giving is really meant to help somebody improve and get better. And it's really specific to the task at hand. So you're not overgeneralizing, you're not over personalizing the feedback, you're making it very direct. Stefan, what about you? How did that feel for you?
Sorry, I'm talking through Brady's computer since we're sitting next to each other. Oh God, I'm on two screens now. It was very it didn't really feel like there was much of substance, so I didn't really have any direction to go in towards, nor direction to go off of. So I didn't really do anything with it.
What about when I completely ignored you?
I was wondering if you forgot that I was doing anything.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're kind of left hanging like, hey, wait, what about me? You know, you see, you know, Kevin, Rebecca, Brittany getting this feedback, good or bad, right? Or completely irrelevant. But you're like, I drew a house. Why aren't you giving me any feedback? And that happens too. It happens all the time in work situations. There are certain people that seem to always get feedback and others that just kind of seem to get ignored. And frankly, as an employee, as a peer, as a colleague, part of your job is going to be asking for feedback. Don't let it go unsaid. Don't let yourself be ignored. If you need help, if you need extra guidance, if you want to know what worked well or what didn't work well, sometimes you got to speak up and ask for it, right? And you know, the excuse, I don't have time, like if you have a manager or other person who says, I don't have time to give you feedback, don't accept it, right? You can challenge that in a polite way, but if you remind them that the feedback, the time they invest in giving you feedback is going to help you, it's going to help you deliver more against their expectations, it's going to help you grow and be a better contributor, that's helping them too, and ultimately it's going to save them time. And as you are somebody who is going to be giving feedback to others, don't ignore people. Don't use the I don't have time as an excuse. Make the time to give somebody feedback, because it really is a gift. It's the way they're going to grow, and it's a way of showing that you care about them and you care about their performance. So really important, important lessons there for everybody. Kevin, what about you? You got like the best feedback. How did that feel for you?
Yeah, I think with what Rebecca said, the sandwich, I've heard of that method, and I think it's pretty effective. And I liked how you gave a compliment and then some things you could work on, and then ended it on a good note.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, I think you will hear people refer to a feedback sandwich, and there are ways to do that in a way that works and makes sense. And then sometimes you'll hear people use a feedback sandwich in a way that's frankly like a little bit of a cop-out in terms of giving real meaningful feedback. So what managers will sometimes do is say, oh, you know, that was great. I really liked how you did X, Y, Z, but you really got to work on this, but don't worry because this is so great. And then what you remember as the listener is the very first thing they said and the very last thing they said. What they said in the middle sometimes gets lost a little bit. And oftentimes the giver of the feedback is doing it that way because they're uncomfortable giving critical feedback or giving that harder message. So as the feedback recipient, make sure you listen hard and ask a lot of questions, because if the meat of the feedback is that stuff in the middle, right? That's where you want to focus. That's where you're going to learn and grow, is by paying attention to what's in the middle. And when I teach people to give feedback, what I do is use this framework. I'm just going to, Lila, please let me know how much time we have here. I know people have other obligations. So do we have a few minutes here to go through the framework, or do I have to jump off quick? I think you're on mute. Yeah, can't hear you.
Lila, you're on mute.
There. Oh. I can't read the text, the chat either, so somebody will have to read it for me.
Angela, you have a few minutes if you want to go through the framework. I think it'd be really helpful for students to see that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So this is the framework I like to use. I've used it for most of my career. It's what I teach at TCR Squared, which is the company that I work at. And it's really simple. It can be used for giving positive feedback. It can be used for giving more constructive feedback. Basically, all you're doing is stating what you saw, right? So I noticed whatever it is. I noticed, Brittany, you had some great 3D aspects to your drawing, right? Which caused, so this is when you talk about the impact or the consequence of it, which really made me say, wow, like I can see this house like on a block. I can picture myself walking up and into this house. It helped me be part of your drawing and understand your perspective. And then you insert a little bit of curiosity. So this is a chance to open up a conversation with the person who's hearing the feedback. Usually it's something as simple as, did you? So, and when I was giving Kevin the feedback, I think I asked him, like, were you thinking about like stability? Was that why you were focused on the lines? So it's really just an opportunity to make sure it's a two-way conversation instead of a one-way conversation. And then it's always ending with some next steps. So, you know, next time for Kevin, it was, why don't you think about adding some ornamentation, right? You've already got this great house with a stable foundation. Let's jazz it up a bit. With Brittany, it was, you know, next time try to whatever, I don't even remember what it was, but you can do this with positive or negative. But the whole goal here is to ground it in facts that were observed firsthand and give people a chance to talk with you about it. It's really meant to be more of a conversation than it is a, you know, just somebody talking at you. So this can play out in a lot of different ways. I think I do have like a couple of examples if we have a minute that Yufei and I were going to just walk through. If we could do a quick role play, maybe we'll just pick one of them.
Yeah, we have time.
We do? Oh, great. Okay, super. So why don't we go ahead and do that? I will be me, because that's how I wrote it, and you will be you in this scenario. So
yeah, real quick, Angela, we can see the script, so we can leave the script up, or if you stop sharing, it's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to read along,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
We have some people who learn better reading, I'm sure, anyway. So, okay, well, I'll start. So at our last team meeting, I noticed that you were texting on your phone the whole time and you seemed pretty distracted. I was embarrassed because everyone, including Naomi, who was the presenter, seemed to notice, and I think you might have offended her. Did you notice that too? What was going on with you?
No, I didn't notice. I'm sorry, I was pretty distracted because my roommate texted me to tell me that her friend actually tested positive for COVID. And we're trying to figure out the last time she saw her friend and if she might have been exposed.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I hope everything is okay. You know, next time, maybe you just discreetly step out of the meeting and you can deal with that like on your own time. What do you think about that?
No, that makes sense. I guess I just didn't want to cause a scene, but it sounds like I caused something else instead. I'll apologize to Naomi. Thank you for letting me know, and it won't happen again.
Great, thank you. So comments, thoughts on that? Does that make sense? Can you see how that might play out in like real life? Yeah. So you get the, you know, here's what happened, here's the impact that it caused. In this case, the presenter looked offended, and you know, you never want to offend anybody in a meeting. And then it was giving him a chance to say, okay, what was going on, right? What was happening? Because you don't know. All you're doing is reporting on the behaviors you observed. So giving that chance to let me know, in this case, what was going on, gave me a new perspective. Wow, there's something serious here. You know, his roommate, maybe these folks are getting exposed to COVID. We want to make sure that he's okay. So it kind of changes the tone sometimes when you understand what's going on from their perspective. What about this positive example? So this is just to show that the feedback framework isn't only to give negative feedback, it also can be used for more positive feedback to reinforce behaviors. So let's try this one. Yufei, at our last team meeting, your point about being cautious to jump to conclusions on the basis of limited data was right on point. You really made us rethink our assumptions. Were you happy with how the conversation progressed?
Well, actually, I was a little nervous speaking up because I thought it might be perceived as challenging. Ahmed, who is really the expert in that area, but I know we all want to get this thing right, so I thought it was worth speaking up.
Well, we're all glad you did. We're in a much better place now that you brought this to our attention and we thought about it a little bit more. So, next time you get nervous speaking up, just remember how much the team valued your contribution today. Hopefully that will make it a little bit easier next time. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm working on being more confident speaking up in these team meetings. It's really reassuring to know that I wasn't out of line. And in fact, my comments were perceived as helpful. So knowing that will make me more comfortable speaking up in the future.
Excellent, great, and scene. Thank you very much for volunteering. Any thoughts or reactions from that second role play? Do you see how you might be able to use this yourself in your roles? Yeah, I see some head nodding. Great. Well, that's really, what I wanted to cover. I know we're running short on time here, but real quick, did anybody have any questions or any final comments? And again, I can't see the chat. I'm sorry. Although I'm not sharing my screen, I can.
I had a question about how you should, what you should do when you're receiving feedback that was kind of like, oh, you always do this, or feedback kind of like that.
Yeah, good question. So what is your instinct? What would you want to do? How do you think you would handle that?
My initial instinct would probably be to maybe point it out, but I don't know how appropriate that would be in a conversation like that, especially if it was like a boss or something.
Yeah, it's tough, right? And I do think you have to pay attention to the situation you're in and who's giving you the feedback, who's around when the feedback is being shared. I think what I would probably do if it doesn't seem true, like if it isn't an always kind of thing, I would probably just in that moment ask maybe a couple of questions to make sure I understood their perspective. I would thank them for the feedback. I'd probably reflect on it a little bit. And then the next time I had a chance to talk with that person, I would say, I've been thinking about the conversation we had when you shared the feedback about my always doing this. And it really stuck with me because I don't think I always do that. Can you help me understand when you've seen me do that in the past? If this is a pattern that's getting in my way, I want to be more aware of it. And if it isn't, then I just wanted some clarification. So I think if you approach it from a perspective of curiosity and give it a little time, right? Like take it in, think about it, and then go back and go with curiosity. It'll give you a chance to dig a little bit deeper into the feedback and understand a little bit more where they're coming from. Because they might be seeing things that you're not, and that could be really helpful. Or frankly, they just might be wrong. And that's okay too, but at least you're kind of asserting yourself and you're asking for deeper feedback, and it'll give you a deeper place to have a more meaningful conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And that happens.
Over the years, I've had feedback from students saying that one of their issues is that they don't get feedback and they really want it. Has any been in that situation that they kind of want to talk about?
Is this resonating for folks? Do you experience this?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, me too, honestly. Throughout my whole career, there's been opportunities where I wish I would have gotten more feedback, or wish the feedback would have been more directive, more meaningful, would have helped me change and grow. And what I've learned personally is you just got to ask for it. And you can't always ask like in the moment, because maybe there's time constraints, maybe there's too many people around, but carve out time. And maybe it's being as directive as saying, I'd like to set up 10 minutes with you because I'd really like some feedback on X, Y, or Z. That gives them a chance to think and prepare. Sometimes when people are caught off guard, they're not in a good position to give feedback. And so they just brush it off or don't give you anything really meaty. But if you give them a chance to think and just say, look, can we at our next one-on-one, or could we set up a one-on-one? I'd like some feedback on this. I'd like to know what's going well, what isn't going so well, what you'd like to see me do differently or better. And I'd like to share some of my perspectives. And I think that gives people a little bit of comfort, knowing that it's going to be a conversation. They're not really being put on the spot, but you're being proactive. And you know what, if I can convey anything to you at this point in your careers, proactivity matters. Seek out feedback every chance you get. Go in with a yes, please for feedback, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable. Like, try to get your mind in a yes, please place, because that'll make you in a much better place to hear it, receive it, think about it, and act on it. And it'll help you. If you take that feedback in, it can only help you grow in your careers, but you got to ask for it.
Angela, we have another great question from Jamie, which he says, how do you deal with feedback when you're kind of also dealing with imposter syndrome or self-esteem issues? And Anne-Marie can feel free to jump in as well with this.
Yeah, I mean, super question. And, you know, again, I think we've heard, right, imposter syndrome is pervasive. Don't think it's just you, it's everybody. I mean, most people I know have experienced this at some point in their careers. And what I personally like to do, and Anne-Marie would love to hear from you as well, what I personally like to do is think of asking for and getting feedback as is my personal toolkit to get over imposter syndrome. Because if you don't know, then it's easy to get stuck in the self-doubt. It's easy to get stuck in like lack of confidence. It's easy to get stuck in the not good enough, not, you know, gonna be good enough. But if you get the feedback, if you know what's going well, what isn't going well, and what you can do differently or better, now you know how to improve, right? Now you know what steps you can take to do better, to be better. And recognize that everybody is constantly working to do better and be better and get better. Nobody is fully formed. Nobody is at the top of their game all the time. So seeking out feedback, honestly, is the best tool you have in your toolkit to try to get over that. And give yourself a little bit of a break. You know, like, give yourself a little bit of space to say, it's okay if I'm feeling this way. Anne-Marie, what about you? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, Angela, I totally agree. And what I was about to add, which you sort of alluded to, is, you know, once you've gotten feedback, a key, I think, in terms of getting rid of your imposter syndrome is sort of understanding the meaning of the feedback, right? And then getting additional sort of suggestions, right? So someone says, you know, this is what you're doing, that's probably not a good thing, right? Ask them, you know, say, I really appreciate you bringing this to my attention. How do you think I can address this? How can I do better? What can I do to improve, right? And I think that helps, rather than just get negative feedback, getting some positive feedback on how you can then improve it, I think helps you get over it, versus just taking away that, you know, I'm doing badly.
Yeah, yes, so well said. That's perfect advice. I completely agree with everything you just said. And building on that a little bit too, like, another way to get comfortable with all of this is to be an active giver of feedback yourself. And the best way to practice is by giving positive feedback. Anytime you see somebody doing something good, call it out. Use the feedback framework. It's a great way to practice, but call it out. If you can build a culture, right, around yourself of feedback, like really build a feedback culture, it's gonna grow. It's gonna be like a self-fulfilling prophecy where everybody starts contributing and you all lift yourselves up. It really, I've seen this catch on. I've seen this have great legs. And it just takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of intention, but it will absolutely.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I think if you get into that culture where you're also giving positive feedback, right? It's feedback, positive and negative. And so everybody gets into it, so that even when you do something good, someone will call it out also, not just calling out the negatives, right?
Exactly.
And do you guys feel as though someone like our interns, who are pretty junior, you know, should they also be giving positive feedback to the people around them?
Absolutely. I think so. I think everybody should be trying to give feedback every single day. And again, I would say most of that, like 80% of that, should be positive feedback. The more you can recognize and call out those really great contributions, I think it makes you look good. It makes you look like somebody who's a good colleague, a good helper, and somebody who cares about others around them. And it also makes people much more comfortable to give you feedback. So yeah, I would say don't look just to leaders and managers to give feedback. It starts with you.
I think managers actually appreciate feedback from, more junior colleagues. Everybody they can get it from. And the fact that a junior colleague can recognize the manager's strengths and call it out, I think the manager would appreciate that. And that would entice them to even more likely give you feedback, right? Whether it's positive or negative. And it becomes a nice relationship, I think.
Exactly. I think that's right. I apologize. I have to hop off. I actually have to get on another call here. But
Angela, I mean,
yeah.
thank you to all of our speakers. I feel like we can just keep talking for another half hour. But thank you so much, Angela. That was really fun and informative. And thank you, Anne-Marie and Chris. I think he had to hop off. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind everyone that July will be all about meeting with your mentors. These are industry folks who want to meet and connect with you, and you can really kind of practice some of these skills with these small groups. And I hope that you'll talk about some of the issues that came up. Many of your mentors studied exactly what you did in college, and so you can, I hope there'll be a really great connection for you to help and advise you in the future. And if you have any issues or questions about your mentor or what you're supposed to do, please email me. We do have more summer sessions coming up. The next one is about career paths in the life science industry on July 28th. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.